Welcome, everybody. We're so excited for this session. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, actually. We have some incredible product leaders, the innovators, some of the innovators behind the products you love and some of the products you will love. They are going to be sharing their expertise and insights and how innovators build their products today. So we're super, super excited. We are actually going to originally this session was going to be 45 minutes long, but we learned yesterday that 45 minutes might not be quite long enough when we have a really incredible group of people and a topic that we're covering. So 11:45 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, so in 45 minutes from now, the Hollow App Teaching Challenge will start. We have several competitors who will be teaching to compete for two major prizes, one from Bridge and then two combined courses from International TEFL Academy. So please go and support them. We'll continue this session as long as our presenters are happy to stay on and end by 12:15 at the latest in time for our next general session panel. So if you have please go and support. You can always come back and watch the rest of this later, the recording, or some of you can stay and some of you can go, or you can watch both at the same time. But we're really excited for that teaching challenge and everything that will bring. So I'll give a reminder at 11:45 Mountain Standard Time to head over there if you are interested in participating and watching and supporting, and we'll continue our discussion here. So to get started, I'm actually going to let these incredible men introduce themselves and in order for us to start. So maybe let's start with Daniel, then go Jacob, Peter, and Nick.
And we're introducing ourselves, Ashley?
Yes, you are.
All right, I'll go over mine. So my name is Daniel. I'm a director of product management here at Duolingo, which is a language learning app. I oversee all of our learning related efforts from the product perspective. I have a few co-leads. So we have about 15 different product teams that are all seeking to improve the efficacy of Duolingo and also add more content and things like that. And I've been at Duolingo for about 3 years. Before Duolingo, I was at Dropbox, and before Dropbox, I was at a bunch of different startups, mostly in Utah, including my own. I did that for about 3 years, and it failed. But I would really hope to make it work at some point in my life. So that's a little of myself.
Thank you, Daniel. That's amazing.
All right, my name's Jacob Burtis. I am currently a co-founder and head of product and strategy at Immersion. And my background, I kind of fell into product and tech product management. I got my PhD in instructional design. So I was very focused on curriculum design and using technology to improve learning outcomes. And I was always very focused on language and language assessment. Worked for a while for an intensive language program out of Brigham Young University that facilitated 6 to 12-week courses to get someone functional in the language so they can go live and function in the country where the language is spoken. Had a lot of fun there and realized as we were starting to infuse technology that learning science can only go so far when you're using these technological devices that have user interfaces to translate the learning. And so I realized that there's a lot of very important principles in user experience design and technical product management to deliver high quality learning experiences. And that pushed me on a path where I worked for a while at Pluralsight, which is a technical training company, before going and starting Immersion.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jacob. We are delighted to have you here as well.
Hi there. It's fantastic to be here. My name is Peter Thomas. I am co-founder and CEO of Nomad. We have a consulting business, a consumer packaged goods, consulting business, where we work with retailers and manufacturers all over the world in bringing their products to market. A lot of our business has been in Japan, China, and Europe. through that business, we actually kind of got into technology because we needed certain specifications on technology products to help us do our work. So one of the products that we developed is a platform called Synapse, which is www.synapse.chat, which is a multilingual collaboration platform. So if you can imagine a multilingual interface with on-the-fly translation with both functionality like Slack, as well as functionality like WhatsApp or iMessage for different styles of collaboration. So we still do a lot of product development for companies all around the world, while we launched that platform Synapse, not just for our own, of anyone around the world. My background, and I hope hearing from all the panel, and hopefully we can share what's interesting to you all. So thank you for getting in the language, and I'll turn the time over back.
Thank you so much, Peter. We're delighted to have you here, and you have a great background to bring as well. And then we have Nicholas Jenkins.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick. I'm the founder and CEO of Language Confidence, and we build speech recognition that's specifically designed for learning English. So instead of deciphering what's being said, we make an assessment on how well it's being said. It's my third startup. The first one I sold when I was 21. The second one, we built some consumer apps that were, it was basically a digital library for children 6 to 12 years old. We failed rather spectacularly, but that took me to living in China. So I lived in China for 3 years. When that business failed, I got my TESOL qualification and I was teaching. And I really wanted to, one of the things I noticed was that my students weren't really progressing with their spoken proficiency when they were at home learning by themselves. So I wanted to build a technology that was basically scalable humans, but for spoken feedback. And that's where this whole idea started. Was living in China, and yeah, since then we've launched. We have made 20 million API calls in production, and building various bits of product now. So lots of exciting things happening. So it's great to be here, and I definitely feel like I'm the least experienced on the panel. So I think I've got a lot to learn and looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. I would say I'm the least one experienced here, so don't worry. I fit that category. I'll take that place. But I am happy to learn and excited to learn from all of you today. I get to work with the Holo team developing our product with over 1 million learners from around the world. So I love getting feedback from our consumers and from our teachers and students, and help sharing that with our dev team. But there's a lot about the process I don't know, and I think a lot of the people here are really, really excited to learn more about the experts in product development that are here today with us. We have one more that panelist that we hope will join us at some point. Michael Lawton, he is with the Literal app. He's incredible, and hopefully he'll join us, but if not, please read his bio and ask him your questions later, because he has a lot of great insights on these same subjects as well. So to get started, I have a question for Jacob and really everybody here, but when did you first have the idea for one of your favorite products? And in general, where do you get your ideas for your products?
I love this question because I think it comes with a pretty big conception. So I'll tell the story first and then kind of tell some of the principles I learned along the way. When we started Immersion, oh look, we've got Michael here.
Hey guys.
Do I get to think more about my question now so he can introduce himself?
Sure. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you here.
Yes, I was very excited to be here, and then I thought 11:30, I'm going to be there. Yes, I'm going to be there early, and wasn't paying attention. So that's me, the guy that doesn't pay close attention to things. So
no, that is totally fine. And Michael, if you're okay, if you haven't heard yet, we decided we're going to extend this panel until 12:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Just because we're going to have a lot to talk about, and we have a lot of amazing people here. So hopefully you all can stay. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about who you are and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I'm Michael Romrell, one of the co-founders here at Literal, and we basically set off on a mission to make reading books just as engaging as social media. And we currently are powering school districts all across the US, getting kids really excited to read. And it's primarily students and adults that generally hate to read. They're the ones that use our platform the most. And so it's been kind of fun for folks to, log into a book when they're standing in line at the bank or, on the toilet. That happens a lot too. So yeah, that's what we do. It's kind of fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Michael. We're so happy to have you here. Well, perfect. Jacob, I hope that gave you some more time to think. So when, just to reformat the question, so when did you have, or repeat it, when did you have your first, or when did you first have the idea for one of your favorite products?
Yeah, so when we started Immersion, we started in a very kind of similar sphere, but with a very different offering. It was more of a service company. So we had access to a lot of students who had significant experience living abroad and teaching English. And our business idea was to connect them to learners all across the world and partner with other larger companies that are doing online English teaching. And we were fairly successful. We were working with a lot of Southeast Asian and Chinese companies to connect these learners and to have them productively teach English. As we were going about that process and we were building a business and we were growing, we kept hearing from users a request to have our teacher trainers, who most of them were college students, do more than just teach and train in English, but also certify the level of English of their students. So they were basically asking for them to give periodic reviews and evaluations that the students could use to say, yes, this is how well I'm doing. This is my current level of English, typically on something like a C4 scale. And coming from my background, it's one thing to train a college student to be an engaging teacher. It's quite another to train them to actually consistently rate language ability. That's very, very difficult to do. Some of the biggest companies that are actually facilitating interview-based language evaluations hire PhD and higher level candidates and go through a very extensive training process just so they can be reliable, because there's so much human bias that is present when you try to rate someone's English. So after hearing this, we decided we need to look into this more. We need to figure out, why is everyone asking for this? And the current solution of having student tutors isn't really providing the need for what our clients are asking for. And then on the flip side, one of the things that we do all the time in terms of thinking about how we frame new products is we think about the jobs that are needed to be done. So there's a whole framework Clayton Christensen brought called Job Stories and Jobs to Be Done framework. And we thought, okay, what do we need to do? What products can we produce that can be hired for that job? And in this case, the job was certifying in an efficient way and affordable way the language learners' level of English. And so as we were going and collecting insights, we started thinking through and targeting, okay, who's feeling the pain the strongest? And we went and talked to a bunch of people. And we went and tried to piece together what the actual problem, or like I mentioned, job was that they were looking to hire. And then within a very small period of time, a day or two after we really learned and explored what that problem was, we put together a smoke and mirrors prototype. A lot of it was based on some of my experience in my PhD. I had done extensive work building and automating assessments. And we put together a prototype and put it in front of about 20 people across various industries that we thought were feeling the pain most broadly. And we got multiple people saying, okay, where can I sign up? When can I buy this product? And for us, that was enough validation to realize the user feedback that we were getting, we were able to turn into an an insight, a product insight that gave birth to our first product, technical product at Immersion, which then was known as the True North speaking assessment, and now has iterated to become Immersion's first fully adaptive automated speaking assessment. And so a couple things I just want to point out there is, I think there's a misconception sometimes that you can go ask customers what they want and they'll tell you, and then you can build what they're asking you to build. Very rarely has that ever happened for me. Usually what happens is they can describe their problem, they can describe their situation really well, and then you need someone who can then translate the problem and then come up with solutions that haven't been thought of before. If customers could come up with their own solutions, what would they need you for? They wouldn't. So translating user feedback to then insights, and then working on how you can turn those insights into actual feasible products and validate those ideas, I think was a huge learning experience for me for that.
Wow, thank you so much. I agree with Benjamin that was spot on. And no, I totally agree that for the best entrepreneurs are not coming up with solutions out of thin air. They are coming up with solutions for specific problems. They find out what those problems are, become the expert on them, and then they find and create the right solutions. And they continue to iterate, just like you talked about. And I think every single person on this panel has experienced that in different forms and ways. Does anybody else want to chime in on this question and share where you get your inspiration from? Or do we want to move on to the next question?
I can chime in here real fast. So I would say the genesis for what we had built actually came at 3 a.m. We were driving to Pamplona to go run with the bulls, and my co-founder leans over and he says, "Dude, I've got this idea, haven't been able to put it down." And essentially for him, the problem that he ran into was he sat down to read a real book and recognized that his brain was pulling him in every other direction, right? Check your email, check this, check whatever. And he started to pay attention to that and recognize, like, hey, there's maybe something else, maybe this is affecting other people. And so he started looking into it and realized, like, yeah, reading is massively on the decline because a book will just never be able to stimulate your brain in the same way that any other app on your phone can. And so that was the genesis of the initial idea. There's what's called bright spots out there. So if you're looking at wanting to start a business or wanting to solve a problem, look for the bright spots. Where is if engagement isn't happening in reading, where is it happening? And so we looked at social media. We looked at Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and these other platforms and said, well, why are people drawn to those? And so we started looking at the mechanics of what was happening in there, how those apps were triggering that opioid system in your brain to keep you engaged and keep you coming back. And once we started to understand those bright spots for different industries, we could take the lessons learned and say, you know what, I think we could apply those same elements to a 500-year-old medium like a book. And I bet that we could make boring old books just as engaging as social media if we use those same tactics. And so that's one of the pieces that I always recommend when I talk to new entrepreneurs is look at other industries, other countries, other places that are maybe totally outside of the realm that you're thinking. Look for those bright spots.
I love that. I totally love that, Michael. And I hope you didn't do all of that research and thinking right at 3 a.m. But
we were too busy being chased by bulls and a lot of drunken people in the city. But yes.
No, but thank you so much for sharing that. And I think this is a question that a lot of people want to know because they have an idea or they want to be an entrepreneur and start a business. So we really like these insights. Does anybody else want to share where they get their ideas from before we move on?
I think quickly, my idea is that I'm trying to scale humans, so build AI that replicates what I could do as a teacher and as a human, and deliver that as a scalable service. So that's how I started this whole business, was I wanted to replicate what I could do in the classroom but deliver it to everyone in the world.
I love that.
I actually, I don't know if people would kind of agree with me on this, and a lot of this is kind of recap of some stuff that I shared in a different session on Wednesday in a much smaller group. But I think there's a big difference, in my opinion, in regards to how you come up with ideas when it startups, right? You want to build your own thing, or you're someone like me, a product manager working at X company trying to build products for a different user base, right? And there are many different ways to make things happen, but one of the ways that I find the most powerful to start your own business is to build something for yourself. And if you look at, there are countless of startups that have started this way. And if you listen to like the podcast of How I Built This by Guy Raz, fantastic podcast, and you can see how people start their own businesses and which ones are the most successful. And it goes from having a physical product to something like Spanx, to all the way to GoPro, to all the way to Facebook, Apple. And like the way all this company started was they actually didn't even want to start a business. They had this problem as a user, and they went out to find a solution for that problem, and they couldn't. There was nothing that really got the job done. So what they did is they built something to solve their own problems. And when they did that, a lot of times they were like, oh my gosh, I could probably sell this, right? And that's how Dropbox started. That's how Airbnb started, right? Like there's all these companies that like, they see a pain point for their own lives, and then they build it with their own hands, and then they sell it to someone else because it's so good. And now there's a lot of reasons why this works. And real quick, the one is the iteration cycles are 1,000 times faster when you're building something for yourself than when you're building something for someone else, right? If you're like an entrepreneur and you're someone else and you're like, oh, maybe I can sell something to like, I don't know, sales representatives from like B2B and ed tech, which I'm not, and I have to go find all these people and interview them and ask what their pain points are and try to innovate. And just setting the interviews already takes a week. Versus if I'm like coding an app that I want for myself, like I can code it and refresh the page and be like, I don't like this. And then immediately change it, right? And you can go through like your speed of iteration is 1,000, a billion times faster than doing that thing with someone else. The other thing as well that, someone else mentioned, James, who is a VC, that's the first thing he looks for when looking to invest in companies. And it's because like, if you care about solving a problem that you have, then you'll have the energy to pull through the hard times, right? If you're more like building something for someone else and you're doing it for the cash, right? Like if things get hard, you don't have a lot of empathy to those users and you're like really want to solve it. And so you'll jump on something else that will give you more money, that. And then the second thing is, this is one of the reasons why I think product management and UX research are later stage functions in a startup. Because typically if you're the founder and you build something for yourself, you understand the user because you are the user and you know how to build it. And versus when you're a PM, something like stage like me or Duolingo, where like I'm building, well, for me, I'm building stuff for myself. But most of the times when you're a PM, you're building stuff for a different group of people that's not you. So it's very ambiguous and you have to do research and you have to talk to them and you have to really understand them because you have no idea who they are, right? And that's very different than when you're doing something for your startup. So the methods that you follow should also be different.
I'm loving this panel already. That was every answer I'm hearing, I think, is so valuable. And I hope everybody who's watching is taking notes. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts, Daniel. Very, very valuable. And let's move on because our time is already escaping us. I want to touch on something that you just talked about, Daniel, and that I know, a few of you actually have touched on, Jacob as well. But how long from start to finish does it take for you to have an idea and then build a prototype and test it? And so you might have gotten the idea from a consumer, you might have gotten it. It might, be your own product where you're like, I need to solve my solution. I feel like that's where I've, created some businesses myself because I see the problem and I want to create it. And so I totally agree with you on that. But maybe we can start with Peter and then have maybe two more people answer it. It looks like Peter is not here right now. So never mind. We'll start with somebody else, and if he can join back, then we'll ask him. And does somebody want to take this question first?
I will volunteer. So for us, it was a particularly interesting process. So we originally we had 3 products: Teach, Test, and Suggest. And the idea was that you combine that with content and you have an AI tutor. And obviously we're a B2B business, and we ended up focusing purely on the test product, which is the LCAT product now. And originally the first demo that we had was 5 sentences. So there was 5 sentences that you could choose from the list. You could speak, get a score, and then, you know, speak another attempt, and then actually be corrected on and pointed out where you're going wrong. And to take that from a prototype, in our case, to actual working product, we had to solve 2 really large problems. The first one was to make the infrastructure to scale. So having a product that you can call endlessly from APIs, so the infrastructure on AWS. And the second one was being able to assess any content, so making a content agnostic product. So we've had to figure out how much data we needed, what the training was, because obviously with an AI, it's all black box. You don't really know how it all works. It is a little bit of trial and error. And we had to go through multiple iterations of that. So to go from a 5-sentence working prototype to an actual market-ready product was 18 months. And then even when we launched, we crashed really badly. I had a customer in Korea that called me like, fix this now, like the service is down, people are complaining, because the usage was so high. So it was quite a path for us because of just the nature of what we do. It's definitely not a consumer business like an app where you can just change it. It does take a little while, so it is a little bit slower. But yeah, it was quite a gap between a working prototype and a fully fledged actual market ready product. And even now, we're you know, there's so much we can do to make it better.
Oh, thank you, Nicholas, for sharing that. It's some products definitely take longer, and when you're creating new innovative solutions, it can take a while, and it's important, you know, the people who succeed are the ones that don't give up. We'll be talking a little bit later about when it is a good time to give up on something and move on. But Peter, I would love to hear an answer to this question from you, if you're willing. How long from start to finish does it take for you to have an idea and then to build a prototype and test it?
Thanks, Ashley. First, I'd say that I think that the idea itself is everything. You know, a lot of people always say, well, everybody's got an idea, right? And use that as you know, as maybe an excuse to downplay the power of ideas. But in fact, you know, the idea is the seed of all innovation. I've liked a lot of the comments that we've had today about you know, making products that solve your own problem, because I think that again, that is that, you know, I would say it's eating your own dog food, right? It's probably a term that everybody uses, but you know, if it's the best place to understand your own problem, or understand the problem, and then through creating that has truly a unique idea that not only solves the problem, but enables somebody to do something that they couldn't have done without it. And I think that is, like, you know, the essence of the idea. And so I would say that you know, back to what I said a few minutes ago about, you know, oh, everybody's got an idea. I would actually say that the opposite of that. I would say that the world doesn't have enough truly fantastic, great ideas. Yes, there's always an idea for, you know, let's create another social media platform for people with dogs, or, you know, or what you know, name the, you know, the number of ideas that are out there that are really just iterations of something that's already there, but doesn't actually solve a unique problem that exists. And through solving that problem, you know, enable people to do amazing things. And as I'm listening to all the panelists here, I can see that their ideas now transformed into products are, you know, enabling people to do amazing things. So I would say first that you know, for me, whether it was our idea for Synapse, or this in 2020 we launched a few health and wellness products that were basically AI enabled journals that basically took what the user was writing, experiencing, and feeling, and translated that into recommendations. It was actually there are actually apps that are connected to the Bible and to the Book of Mormon, but connect content specifically curated for them that whether they're feeling good, but that enables them to go on the path that they want to be on. So I would say that coming up with those ideas were less than I could say, not necessarily say, oh, it took this much amount of time, but it was actually, it came through for Synapse, it came through the need to have, to have a platform that could connect us with in China, and a retailer in Japan, and a designer in Italy, and our team who also spoke 3 or 4 different languages. And so I normally can't sit down and create an idea by like pulling out a whiteboard and say, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Let's think about our next big idea. So it's difficult for me to say how much time it takes, because it's more about the experience of life and translating that experience of life into something that makes you do things better. So for instance, we have great comments from users on, for instance, those AI journals I was just talking about. People who truly love it. They say I love this. This is incredible, because of what it allows them to do, which is basically apply the scripture their own personal life, right? Not just, oh, I'm going to read through and find some interesting things, but whatever's happening to them today, it allows something to connect to something that helps them go in the direction they want to. Synapse, again, the same thing. That was a classic case of eating. I can't count the numbers of nights that I literally was almost in tears while we were trying to get the technology right, because we weren't able to, easily onboard people, or whatever it was, just multiple things. The only way you can ever make great stuff, again, is through that idea that transforms the way that you live, that transforms the way that you work, that transforms the way that you think, and also through taking that product or that idea through fruition by eating your own dog food. And that meant that I actually deleted every other communication app, collaboration app on all my devices, and all the people I was working with, this is the only thing I would use. And it was a classic thing where, back to eating your dog food. The dog food tasted like crap at times. But the only way, it tasted so awful. Dog food, real dog food, is gourmet compared to what I was eating, for a 6-month period of time. But the only way you ever create great stuff is by going through that process and eating it and disliking it, but still keeping your eye on the vision of solving the problem and enabling yourself to do something. So again, I hope that makes sense. That the best product ideas come through the experience of life. They're not forced iterations of anything, and you bring them through life. You bring those ideas through life through experiencing themselves and never giving up. Allowing yourself to have a back door or a way to get away from. And so again, I thought this is a great conversation. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much for sharing, Peter. And I saw Daniel nodding his head a lot while you were talking. And Daniel, did you have anything you wanted to share?
Actually, I always have stuff to share, even if I don't know what I'm talking about here. But I hear about this often too. It's just like execution. And I went to business school, I studied business strategy. All my friends that went to like McKinsey and all that stuff, right? And all of them are like, everyone that I've talked to is like, execution is more important than the idea, right? And I 100% disagree with that. Like, I really think the idea is more important than the execution. And it's not just the idea itself, it's like everything around it. How did the idea come to pass? right? Was it, to your point, was it from my whiteboard, right, Peter? Or like, do you actually experience something? You're like, my gosh, what is happening, right? Like, and that drives motivation. And I was looking at a debate, Peter Thiel versus I don't even know who, but a big fan of Peter Thiel in general. And he's talking about how like there's all these kind of big tech companies that just don't have any good ideas. And you talk about Google, right? Apple, and like all these other big tech companies that like they are hoarding cash and they're basically losing money every year with inflation, right? Hoarding cash because they have no idea where to put all this money, right? They just don't know what to do. And his point that I 100% agree with is like Amazon is probably like the only one of these kind of big tech companies that have enough vision to, and maybe now with with Elon Musk, with Tesla, SpaceX, probably now that's another exception where like they are putting all their money to work because they have a strong vision of the future of where things can be. And I think ideas are very hard to come, even for this kind of tech giants that you see, right? You go tour Google and you talk to what they're working on, and I've done that. Like I was there a few times last year, and it's like, yeah, they're in pure optimization mode, and they have so much cash that they create multiple teams to compete with each other for the same idea to see who can come up with the best execution of that version, because they don't have enough ideas of things they can do, right? And I think that's an important principle to kind of to understand, is like how you come up with this stuff is actually very important.
I actually want to chime in because I think that's a really excellent point. When you said that the idea is more important than execution, I immediately was like, no way. But you made a great point there, right? You got to have a good idea to execute on. You can execute on something amazing and it just doesn't work if the idea doesn't ring a bell with people. Actually, you asked how long it takes to prototype, and my answer to that would be that it should take you as long as you need to prove that the idea actually has legs, right? Now, here's the problem. Most people, when they get an idea, they say, great, I love it. This will solve my problem, so I know it'll solve everyone else's problem. And oftentimes they skip the important part of the user testing. And Daniel talked a little bit about this earlier, but I think prototyping has two functions, right? Most people look at it as this is my early version of the product to get me to the bigger version of the product. But I think you actually need to look at prototyping as, how do I put the least amount of resources into testing an idea with people to see if this actually has legs, right? So one of the things that we did, instead of coding anything, what we did is we went to Facebook and we created fake Facebook accounts for all of the characters in Romeo and Juliet. And then we logged in one at a time into a group chat and wrote out the first act, scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet from each different character. It took us forever to write that out, but we didn't code anything. And then we went around and I just showed my phone to people everywhere I went, in the airport, in the coffee shop, in the whatever, and said, hey, this is Romeo and Juliet. Would you read a book like this? And we started getting reactions. And what was really worrying me is that I wasn't getting enough negative reactions. That was a big worry for me, because I needed to know that people were willing to say no, that this was a terrible idea. There has to be, for any idea, there's very, very few ideas that apply to everyone worldwide, right? And so you got to find the people that it's not going to apply for, the people that don't want your product, that don't want your idea, because that helps you narrow in on who your market is. And so once we started getting so many yes, I love this, we started changing up who we were talking to. And we started approaching people who were reading in public, who were reading their books, and we started going to them, and they grimaced at the idea of reading a book in a group chat format. The idea was just terrible to them. And that actually got me really excited, because then I realized, like, yes, there is a market. There's people that wish they read more, that wish they had better English, that wish their language skills were good enough that they could read these books, that we are appealing to. And so that was really helpful for us. So I guess to sum that up, prototyping really, in my opinion, should handle two things. One, it should disprove your idea, and you should try to disprove your idea so you can focus on a better idea, to Daniel's point, right? And then the second thing is, yes, it's that stepper stone to get you up to a real product that you could actually go out and sell.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. Very, very, very valuable thoughts here. and experiences. And I love Jacob's comment. We swapped the term minimum viable product (MVP) with earliest testable product (ETP). That's beautiful. I think that's great. I think that explains itself. For whoever doesn't know what an MVP is, go Google it and learn more. I'd love to move on to the next question. We are coming up on 30 minutes soon. But if we can ask, maybe let's start with maybe Nick or Jacob on this. Maybe Nick, who actually builds the products, and what is your build process? We've talked a lot about the ideas, where they come from, and maybe like how long it takes to build, but what, how does it actually take place? Can you build these products yourself? And I assume most of you are going to say, well, you can, but no, you need a team. And you need an audience, obviously. You need a market. So you need the consumer. So anyway, sorry, I'll stop talking, and Nick, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
A lot of this was a lot of our actual product design and I mean, not actually writing the code. I actually went and self-taught myself. Originally, straight after school, I was a coder. Well, I couldn't write a line of code now to save myself, but in part of this, I actually went and studied for about 6 months phonetics and linguistics to get an understanding of how everything works. Took my experience as a teacher and what I knew about code. We originally, I had when I was living in China, I was like, well, who's got the skills to build what I need? And I put together a spreadsheet of researchers around the world, both pre and post doctorate graduates, and literally started calling them, just calling LinkedIn, hey, I'm doing this, I want to build this, can you help me out? We got hung up on quite a few times, of course. I did get a couple of emails saying, we're not interested, please stop contacting me. But then obviously you find the diamonds in the rough and the really talented researchers that can help you actually build the product. And a lot of it was trial and error and it's trying to convey what goes on up here. I think I'm quite a different thinker and I see things a little bit differently to someone that's more, straight down the line as a researcher. Did take a bit of work. But a lot of it was I had to jump in and the data set that we use I designed that based on our initial experimentation. So we found originally a team from MIT to help us out, and our co-founder as well. My CTO has a PhD in engineering from the University of Melbourne, and I was looking for people that were like, yeah, this is a really cool idea, and we're willing to put in their free time to get things started and kicked off. So it's all, we own 100% of the IP. We don't use any third-party sources, and it's a mishmash of research papers, PhD theses that we've read with ideas that we've had, and then feedback we've had from customers, and that's how we've sort of put the product together. So I think that's about it. So Jacob, over to you.
I love that. I'll talk a little bit about what we actually do from an engineering standpoint to make to get them actually in the hands of users. So we follow a few principles that we kind of live and die by. So much of it can be found if you look into lean product development. We very much ascribe to this. That's something you can Google. But the most important principles that we follow are flowing value and maximizing and prioritizing flow efficiency. So what that means is when we think we've come up with something that can provide value to our users, then we want to identify what the right smallest batch of that value can be, and prioritize flowing that value out so we can get in the hands of users as soon as possible, as opposed to having a planning meeting where you identify a bunch of different lists of value and put them together in larger batches, and then prioritize resource efficiency, or making sure everyone's busy working on that big batch, and then having releases that actually go out to customers rather infrequently. And so this really describes a lot of the way that we work. And in order to do that, you have to have a ridiculous amount of cohesion between your product people, between your, if you have any subject matter experts, and then your engineers. And so we actually look at our entire organization as the product development organization. And so I lead product. I have a CTO who leads technology, and we together are the collaborative heads of the product development organization. And then as we go down, we have product development teams that consist of a product manager, UX designer, an architect, and several engineers. And they all work functionally together. And this requires a lot of things. It requires really strong lateral management skills. And what that means is learning how to exert influence without having authority. So a product manager, for example, on a product development team doesn't have any hierarchical authority to tell the engineers what to do. They need to learn to use data and use their ability to formulate their ideas and solution ideas to make sure everyone's on board and they move together. A few other things that we really focus on, and these are more technical, but test-driven development, we really focus on prioritizing value. So we use Kanban, which basically says, okay, we're always asking, what's the next most important valuable thing we can get to our customers? And let's do everything we can to take that and push it in front of them, instead of having any sort of work in progress or things that are pushed 50% along, but then we have 10 things 50% along and none of them are providing value to customers because they're not in their hands yet. So that's just a little bit of a window into some of the principles that we follow. And just to say, right now we're a company of about 50 strong. When we were a company of 3 or 4 people, we followed the same principles. We just had to do it on a much smaller scale with much fewer resources, people wearing a lot of hats. So that's kind of a quick answer to that.
I don't know if I could agree more. It's so important for everybody in the organization to be a part of the product team, to really take ownership and share their ideas, give feedback, and quick iterations and getting the value out to the customers, getting feedback. I love everything that you said, Jacob, and thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else want to touch on this? Oh, before actually we move on, really quickly, the Hollow app challenge is starting. So if anybody wants to go and maybe listen for a couple more minutes, or I'd recommend going and participating, downloading the Hollow app, watching the lessons that are taught from our competitors, and voting on your favorite English or EFL lesson. We have some major prizes that we're going to be giving away later this afternoon, and our judges would like your help to decide on who we should award those prizes to. With that, we will continue with our discussion. So does anybody else want to touch on or answer this question, or should we move on to our next one?
Because Daniel, I love that you got these different viewpoints, right? So talk to me about that. You mentioned in the comments that you're kind of opposed to anything minimal. So what does that testing process really look like for you when you want to test an idea out, see if it's something people will bite on? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's spectrum, right? Like from one end of the spectrum, you got people who wait 3-4 years before they even show one single person what they've been working on for the past 4 years, and then they show it to them and they find out like, oh my gosh, nobody wants this, and like, oh my gosh, just wasted 3-4 years, right? On the opposite side, you got people who are like MVP, just ship the minimum, like something that worked, but just get it out there as soon as you can to see if anyone's going to want this before you spend too much time on it, to then find out that nobody wants it because their product is crap. But they don't realize that it's because their product is crap. They think it's because people don't want it, right? And so the answer is really somewhere in the middle, in my opinion. But I think we're a little too much, in the last few years, we've gone a little too much on the minimum side of things. And that's led by like the lean startup and all that stuff, which I'm very much against everything in general. And I think the reason that's happening, the reason why I'm opposed to it is because if you think about the MVP and you're thinking about, I want to test this as fast as I can just to see, and it's okay to fail and fail fast, And typically what happens is you have people taking shortcuts and and trying to show something to users that is actually not what you intend to show them. And the product that you show them is actually not that good, right? And you know, obviously, if like I mentioned this before in the last kind of stuff, like if people are dying and you're like, oh, you know, here's anything to help you survive, like obviously, yeah, sure, give it to them, right? But if it's anything else, like, you know, I have life, and you show me like a piece of trash product, and you're like, it's the MVP because it gets. Typically, you take these shortcuts that are unnecessary. The products they end up showing to users are not good quality, and then you end up learning the wrong things, right? Like, think about, for example, what Clubhouse is doing right now, right? Like, those people are spending their time building a great product. I mean, they're taking their time, and they've been on this for a while, and you still can't access Clubhouse unless you get an invite, and that's been going on for a while. And like, they are actually just making sure their product is fantastic. Or think about, for example, if you're like Elon Musk, I can't even imagine Elon Musk saying, ship the MVP, see what we can learn. Or Apple computers saying like, oh, just ship the MVP, let's just see what we can learn. Like, they take forever. And what they want to do is more like, let's build a great product and let's have that be the focus. So what I like more than MVP or minimum or whatever is just do an ROI calculation, right? Like return for investment. And at some point, right, like if you're going to be investing more time and the return's starting to decrease, maybe it's time to show someone, right? But in my opinion, it's more of an ROI than like the minimum stuff, and just try to learn as much as possible. In reality, you're probably just like learning the wrong things and shipping the wrong things. I don't know if that really answers your question, right? But like, it's a balance. But like, I like to instead of decreasing the quality of the product, I like to decrease the scope of the product. So for example, you know, we have a lot of content that we have to create at Duolingo. We have something similar to kind of what we're doing literal with stories. We have, you know, for example, we're creating a feature right now where you have skills that are 100% focused on getting people to speak. But we are making those as good as we can. But instead of making 100 of them for like 100 courses, we're creating like 8 of them and see if people like them. And those 8, you know, and then if I like them, then we'll figure out how to scale them. But those 8 are damn good. Like, this is our very best shot at creating 8 little skills and lessons, right? Like, we're not shipping trash and seeing what we can learn. It's like, we're doing our very best and see if that sticks. If not, we'll iterate, you know?
Totally love that. Jinx, yes, no, that's, thank you, Michael, for asking for Daniel's thoughts on that. There's been so many wonderful comments. I haven't read all of them. I've been focused on whoever's speaking, but yes, yes. And I think it's important to know when, you know, it depends on what product and what industry you're working on. Because for example, you know, my uncle who created, you know, he worked with a team and created this huge sod harvester. It's a machine that's worth $250,000. And they spent years developing it. And that was the right move for their company. And, you know, they were one of the fastest growing businesses in Utah, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And, you know, they started out small. It took them a long time to build the perfect product, but, you know, now they ship it all over the world. And for, you know, language, and, you know, when we're talking about like applications and, you know, mobile applications or language learning assessments, you know, there's a spectrum. And sometimes you need, you know, there are certain aspects or features where I think you can push it a little bit faster to see if it's a feature somebody wants. You know, put a button even before you develop the feature and see if, you know, people click on the button if they want that product. And then, you know, oh, this hits a pain point and we need, you know, this is a solution that people want and need. We're going to spend a little bit more time on it before we release it, because if we release it too soon, we won't even know, you know, if the customer wants it. If it's not the right product, it's not, you know, half done, it doesn't prove anything. So I love, yeah, there's a spectrum, and I just love what you talked about. So great thoughts. Awesome. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next question?
Really briefly, along this whole conversation, in my mind, it's defining and really recognizing what value means to the user. Because when you're talking about Elon Musk or Apple, And if we're talking about iterative development, like if I delivered a processor chip to the user, that provides zero value, right? And so you have to have this ROI calculation really, and understand what is the value it's going to provide to this user base, and then be able to base all of your frameworks on that. So,
Jacob, there's a term called speed to value. There's a speed to value ratio that I think is really important as you're developing a product, which is how quickly can you deliver the most value, right? And there's a proportion there, or there's a ratio. There's speed and there's the amount of value, and it'll take you longer to deliver more value. And so that's the ROI calculation that I hear from Daniel, is you've got to understand who your audience is and what that ratio needs to look like. And so if you're going after an MVP, a minimum product to test with, great. But the audience that you test that with shouldn't be everyone, right? Because you only get a chance for a first impression once. You should target that to a small group of people to test with, right? Early adopters that are okay with bugs, that are okay with that. And you need to be sure that you're asking the right questions and user testing in the right way, so that you're not getting feedback on necessarily the quality of the product, but rather the idea itself, right? So I think, to Daniel's point, that ROI, that speed to value ratio, it will vary based off of where you're at with your company, based off of what your product is. There's a couple of things to
and what you're trying to learn, right?
Yeah,
totally.
Really quickly to jump in, I think that's also, that whole MVP is affected by your level of expertise in the domain. So if you just have a cool idea, you're like, hey, let's go test this, as opposed to someone like Jacob that has a PhD in this area and they know more about what's going on. I think it's a lot. You can, if the someone's making a corn harvester or a grain harvester that's never built one before, it's going to take a lot longer than someone with that domain expertise that knows the market a lot more and understands that.
Yeah, and if your access to capital is big, it take more time to do a killer product, right? A killer first version, or to Daniel's point, right? Limit the scope and deliver an extremely good quality on a smaller scope. If you have no access to capital, sometimes that's the best avenue to go, is to deliver something minimal, show some traction, get some capital in, build on that. But again, I think the scope of your audience needs to adjust accordingly.
I guess, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. And it's worked for you, so that's really good. But like, I've done this probably like 10 times, where like I am doing it on the side. A lot of these examples that I gave, and like, those are people who took their time, who did it on the side while having a full-time job, right? Like, these are not, you don't need to necessarily have like millions of dollars in investment to take your time, right? I think this is why it's important. For example, if you're building a startup, I think one of the best, there's different ways to do it for sure, but one of the best ways to do it is solve your own problem. And then you ship it when it's solved your own problem. Like, you don't ship it before then. You, like, whenever it has something that your problem has been solved and you're very happy and you use it all the time, you're like, this is amazing. Then to start onboarding people. But before then, I don't even know if there's a reason to show it. I mean, you can show people, sure, but I don't know if there's a reason to ship anything. Like, for example, I built this, as an example, built this task management tool called Spring Sled, that if you Google it right now, you won't find anything because it's dead. I'm sure you'll find some blog posts or something. And we ended up getting like 250,000 users in the first 2 months. Because what we did is we built the MVP, and we said, well, what do people need in a task management tool? And we built all those things that like, we're like, these are the must-haves. And then we're like, let's try to see if anyone would be interested in this and continue iterating. And so what we did is we started putting it out there. It completely blew up. It went crazy viral. In less than a month, we got all the 250,000 users. We weren't expecting that. And then we started onboarding people, and then like everyone left because the product was just not ready. And then what did we learn? Nothing. We killed the product, like completely killed it. And then at that point, we're trying to raise money because we knew what needed to build, and we just couldn't. And, like, I think in that, my opinion, what would work best for that specific scenario is I would have loved to spend an extra year building a good product before starting to bring people in to see if it would help them. Like, I think that is more of, I think you start launching, or you start like actually getting users when you feel like it solved your problem. And that's a very objective way to do it. And you know what? The cool thing about solving your own problems is that the worst case scenario is nobody else wants it in the world, but you solved your own problem. You know, you're much better off because you had a problem and it's solved thanks to you, even if nobody wants it. So you enjoy the process. It's beneficial even if nobody else uses it, because you didn't have in mind of like, I'm going to start building our company. You just want to solve your own problem. So it's a win-win even if nobody else uses it. But I do think that the process is very different when you're like a PM at an X startup, right? So bucks, very different process that you follow at that point, right? Like then it's more about like, okay, yeah, I should talk to users, I should show them something, see if it's going in the right direction, all that stuff. But I think the process changes from the beginning of idea to a successful company late stage who are building stuff for someone else.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts, Daniel. I love the differing perspectives because we need to challenge, different processes. And I think it all depends on context, what's best. And it can be hard to know, what to do in different contexts, but lots of really, really great thoughts. Thank you for sharing. We have about 14 more minutes before we'll need to start the next session. So maybe we can end with this final question. What words of advice would you give to aspiring developers or product managers? Would love to hear some thoughts from all of you.
All right, this is words of advice to product managers or developers, like in software engineers type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, anybody that wants to develop their own product, or maybe that wants to create their own business, and especially, in linguistics or ed tech, like kind of the industry that we're focused on right here. But any words of advice for people who want to become like each of you?
My biggest one, and this has been hit on a bunch of times, is really start with the why and make sure it's pure to yourself and your mission and motivation. So, I hear some of this when I hear Daniel talking so much about, be the user or solve your own problem. But I think it extends beyond where, in my case, for example, right now, we're best described as a language assessment company. And to be honest, that doesn't keep me up at night with joy, because I know assessments usually aren't very fun, and they're not very enjoyable for people to take. I do recognize the value of the data that comes and what can be done with that data. But when I look at my why, our mission at Immersion is to close the global communication gap. I have seen firsthand the power that learning language can have in someone's economic life, and it can improve their job opportunities, it can improve their educational opportunities. I think it can make the world a better place. And so I feel like connecting people through language is something I can really get behind. And right now, we found a niche that we can target. We have a lot of good strengths, a lot of great technology that really we've been first to market in a lot of ways. We can provide a very valuable service and product, and that keeps me going. And then I can see where we're headed and how the technology we're building can ultimately build toward some pretty exciting things. A vision of personalization, customization, really that doesn't exist right now in any sort of digital language domain. So again, that's just my recommendation is, can you find your why? Can you find your motivation? The thing that really keeps you going, so that when you hit lows, and trust me, you will hit lows. There will be times when it's easier to give up, and it's easier to go and do something else. And at those times, can that why drive you through? Can it push you through? Can it give you what you need to say, no, like I have something unique that I can really deliver for the world, and I'm going to continue on that path because I believe in it so much.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
I think to continue on from that, it's definitely the reason that you're doing this is a huge thing. I mean, I was a teacher, and I was like, hey, this is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And as a business, language confidence is, there's a social net benefit to what we do. It's a really difficult, technical, interesting problem to solve, and I get to work with the smartest people in the world. And there's a big upside financially. We're going to build a large company out of this. So those are the three reasons that we do what we do. In terms of advice for product managers and engineers and developers, I think biggest one is we talk to our customers a lot. They are the boss. They're your boss. They pay. I think the modern mantra about growth is it's product-led growth. My customers have so much information available to them nowadays, and they can move so quickly between, I download an app on my phone and it's gone. I log in and then I don't like it, then it's gone straight away. So they can move so very quickly. So talking to them is really important. And what we had a bit of trouble first, because when we first built our product, people didn't know what to do with it. We went and saw Babbel, Busuu, Memrise, when I was living in China, we saw the big Chinese education corporates, and they're like, hey, this is really cool. But what do we do with it? And then it took us a while to figure out, by talking to them, they're like, how do we monetize this? How do we price this? Pricing was a huge thing for us. What's our business model? And that was just a lengthy process, talking to and companies and a bit of hustle to get in the door. I flew to Berlin and just rocked up in the office of Babbel and was like, hey guys, what do you think about this? Can you give us some feedback? Ended up spending quite a bit of time with their product team over there. So talk to your customers a lot. Also, I think there was a question that we ran through about being stubborn with the vision, but loose with the details. I think that's really important, because the problem that you're trying to solve is it's still the right problem, but how you actually get there is a really convoluted path. And that's just being persistent. And that goes back to Jacob's point about why are you doing this? And starting your own business or being a persistent product manager it's tough. It's hard. And I think maybe one of the Stoics, Seneca or something like that, said that you can do any how as long as you've got the why.
I think that's awesome. I'll chime in to add, I guess, depending on what you're looking to do, right? If you're a product manager or a developer that's wanting to get involved with another company, this probably isn't necessarily for you. But if you're someone with an idea that is thinking about starting something, I would say, you can do it on your own, but it's hard to do that. I would highly recommend getting the right team around you. There's a phrase that I love called live free or DIY, right? DIY stands for do it yourself. But it kind of reads as live free or die, right? So you can try to do it yourself, but it is hard. It is challenging. It takes a long time. And you may be an excellent product manager. You may be an excellent developer. But the odds that you're also really good at sales, the odds that you're also really good at managing operations and all of the other aspects that go into building a business is really low. And so unless you're just crazy confident, I really recommend building a strong team around you, particularly with sales and operations. But it really sort of depends on what your idea is, what the space you're in. But get a good team around you and lean on those guys, because someone mentioned in the comments, your assumptions, are 80% wrong. I don't know if that's the right number, but it's true. Like, as much as I like to think that I know everything, which I try to tell people, and they frequently remind me that I'm wrong. I don't. I know so little, and so I got to lean on the folks around me to help provide those other perspectives, and that's ultimately what ends up building a great product. Not necessarily the actual skills to code it, but the concepts and the ideas that you're fed from those that surround you.
Oh God, thank you, Michael. Looks like you're last, Daniel.
I'll just keep it brief since we're out of time. Just 2 or 3 quick things. One, I think, I got this advice throughout my career, and I still get it, where people are saying, hey, Daniel, you should follow your passion. Like, follow your passion. And I'm here thinking about, like, in school, about to graduate. I'm like, the heck is my passion? Like, eating fries? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how do I know my passion? I don't even know what type of jobs are out there, or like, I don't know. For me, that was like the worst piece of advice that I got because I had no idea what they're talking about. And so how do you follow something you don't know? And a lot of it came through trial and error, right? Like I went to some places that like I had no idea what I was getting myself into it. And I walked in the door and I'm like, oh, I guess this is not my passion. Like I hate this. I gotta get out of here. And it's okay. So my first advice is like, it's okay not know things and not know the answer of things. And it doesn't matter as much. And we think that we're race and we're competing and like we looking for the next promotion or we want to start the next business or people are graduating and they're getting all these jobs getting paid more than us. It doesn't matter. So first is okay to not know things, and two is there's a lot of actually really crappy product managers out there in the world, like really, really bad product managers. Like I am blown away how many bad. Obviously, all the good ones work at Duolingo, right? I say that in case they hear me, But no, we have a lot of good ones here. There's a lot of good ones out there too. But I think what makes a big difference between a great product manager and a bad product manager or a mediocre one is, are they obsessed with finding the truth? Right? You get all these conversations and this kind of product channels of like Scrum versus this, that versus that. And I'm like, my gosh, it doesn't matter. What are people so obsessed about? Like, are sprints 2 weeks long versus 1 week long? Or are we gonna have stand-ups via Slack or via like we're stuck on this like things just going through the I forgot what I'm saying, like going through the motions, right? Of like, yeah, this is what a PM kind of looks like, so I'm going to replicate that. But the people who are obsessed about finding truth, it doesn't matter what the process looks like. They just want to find what do users actually want? What is actually a good idea and how we're going to do that? It doesn't matter whether you talk to 8 users or not, or whether you did surveys or not. Like, it's just about like, do you feel confident that you have the truth? Or, and if not, then keep going, right? So there's truth seekers. And that's why that's why I think, and we're surrounded by this in this panel, that some of the best PMs in the world are actually founders, people who tried to do their startups before. Because when you're in the startup world, as all these people would tell you, it's hard to fake it. I mean, you could fake it, but you cannot fake it. Like the only way to do, there's no, in the words of Ben Horowitz, there's no silver bullets. They're just lead bullets, right? Like you just have to go in and find something that people use and just do your best to make sure they use it, right? That's it. Versus when you're working at a company or something like that, there's a lot of easy ways you can hack the system and make it look like you're just adding value. You're doing Scrum best practices, right? But just be obsessed with finding the truth is my second advice. That's it.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Nicholas, Michael, and Jacob, and Peter had to leave. If we have anybody who wants to learn more about your companies or learn about what you're doing, is it okay if they reach out to you?
Yeah.
And so,
but Twitter is good.
Twitter. Look them up on social media.
No, don't look. Actually, forget it. I don't know. I'll put my email. I just don't check my email.
These are some of the busiest guys, busiest people you will ever meet right now as we're working on creating some incredible products. So we really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom, and we just really, really appreciate it. I think everybody's been really grateful for this session. Well, we will end there, but thank you. Hopefully we can, next year at the Language Summit, we can continue this conversation and continue to learn more. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.